Hey everyone, I wanted to quickly go over the new and exciting news we got from Monster Hunter Rise on the Nintendo Switch. We got another pair of interviews from director Ichinose talking about the inspirations to Camera Village and the comparisons across the games in the past, alongside how monsters in Rise are inspired by Japanese folklore. In the first article, director Ichinose explains that the development team took inspirations from Japanese myth for both the creations of the new monsters in Rise, but also the rampage events that happens in Camera Village. Hyaki Yako is a Japanese ancient myth often referred to as Night Parade of 100 Demons, where hordes of ghosts, otherwise referred to as yokais, parade the streets at night. The team wanted to recreate that image in Monster Hunter World, and to give it an authentic feel during the rampage monsters will begin to attack the village one at a time. He then began to break down some of the new monsters in Rise and what their exact inspirations actually were. Magnamalo will be the main monster and the main threat to Camera Village along the Rampage event. The main inspiration for Magnamalo actually came from samurai armor. While not considered specifically a yokai per se, samurai ghost armor is a well-known image and the team took that as for the sign. Hitodamas are usually considered fiery floating balls around at night associated with armor samurai ghost. They're usually referred to as the souls attached to the armor. Director Ichinose states that Magnamalo emits gas from his body, and that looks like onibi or ghostly lights, and his main characteristics from the tiger design's perspective is inspired by tigers from Asian countries. Aknosam takes inspiration between a crane, which is a type of bird, and a Kaza Obake, which is a well-known yokai that is shaped like an umbrella. Ichinose states that cranes stand on one foot, and they usually look like an umbrella, and that's why the team chose to combine them together. When it closes its wings, its patterns resemble an umbrella with a long tongue, which is the hallmark of the Kaza Obake's feisty attitude. The rather popular chunky boy Tetranodon is actually inspired by kappas, one of the most popular and most commonly talked about yokai in Japanese folklore. Kappas are green creatures often depicted as a mix between boys and a turtle. Ichinose states that they consider creatures that live nearby water like turtles, crocodiles, and even platypuses. Legend states that kappas enjoy wrestling, which is why Tetranodon uses famous sumo wrestling attacks like open-handed strikes. The greatest Suchi was inspired by Kamaitachi, one of the sneakiest of all yokai. This weasel-like creature attacks people in the middle of a whirlwind, and its attacks are so fast that the victims often never notice it. Director Ichinose says that Kamaitachis work together in groups of 3. That's why the graded Suchi has 2 regular Suchi helping it with it at all times. To match the world and style of Monster Hunter, they made it a raptor-type creature. This way, its scythe-shaped tail are the main weapons at its disposal. When it comes to Somnacanth, Ichinose says that mermaids are commonly known as aquatic creatures with the upper body of a young beautiful woman. However, in Japanese folklore, they also have their own mermaids with the upper body of a devil instead. Western mermaids are known to lead people astray with their beauty, and they wanted to add that similar aspect to Somnacanth's identity. He states that leading players astray is a bit of a difficult mechanic to interpret in gameplay, so they chose to give Somnacanth a sleep option instead, while his movements are taking inspiration from sea otters. This is one of the things that I spoke about in the past, specifically before we saw the original reveal of Somnacanth, that it was going to be a siren-inspired monster, but the abilities that it had were actually quite diverse. On top of its sleep, it can also do AoE fire after cracking open the shell, and it can also heal itself, and even occasionally do a flash attack, like the following monster. Bishiten clearly is inspired by Tengus, another staple of Japanese creatures of folklore. Tengus share similarities with how we in the West portray devils. They lure people into evil paths. Ichinose claims that Bishiten takes inspiration from the most common Tengu of all, the Karazu Tengu, who has a sharp nose and looks like a crow. Although his body is more like a monkey, he states that his tail is in the shape of a fan that Tengu is often holding with his hands. It throws items at the hunters like persimmon fruits, showing that it's a monster with high intelligence. Another feature of Bishiten is that it has a wide variety of facial expressions and also movements. Lastly, director Ichinose spoke about Gauss Harag and that the team often referred to him as a Namahage. For reference, if you've been watching my videos, you know that I spoke about the Namahage bear for quite a bit, since the leaks were very detailed about him specifically. Namahages are beasts that appear in traditional festivals in certain areas of the Akita Prefecture in Japan. In this event, men are dressed as demons wearing straw capes with red or blue masks, and fake knives that go door to door frightening children that might have misbehaved. He clarifies that when the team was thinking of monsters that inhabit the Frost Islands, Namahages came to mind, as the Akita Prefecture is a very cold and snowy area in the northeast of Japan. This would also explain why he can mold ice into his right arm and turn it into a massive blade. Sadly, we don't get any direct quotes when it comes to the inspirations for both Rachna Kadaki, the new spider monster, and of course Almudron, the new mud boy. Hopefully we'll get more details about them in the future. Moving on to the next interview, director Ichinose broke down his inspirations for the starting village and Rise, and his place in the contextualized history of the series. He states that he's personally always been fond of Japanese settings, and it's been quite some time that has passed since Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. With Rise, it felt like the perfect time to reintroduce a Japanese-themed world alongside other ancient influences. They asked him if there's any relations between Monster Hunter Rise's Camera Village and Yukumo Village from Monster Hunter Portable 3rd, since that area has been seen in both Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate as well as 4 Ultimate, and is held in high regard. Ichinose explains that while geographical locations of Camera Village and the maps around it that you will be exploring is never specifically mentioned in the game, you might actually notice some of the aspects that indicate that it could be close to Yukumo Village. Personally, I found that part a bit interesting because there's been a few maps that have been revealed already that are being explained as reimaginings by the developers of previous maps, but this makes it sound like they're actually their very own standalone areas. Director Ichinose actually talks about that by stating that the Flooded Forest is a map with the temple ruins that feel inspired by South American culture, and they could indicate a geographical relation to Yukumo Village. He further specifies that Portable 3rds had a map with the same name, so players might notice that Yukumo Village could be a nearby location. While Yukumo Village is famous for his hot springs, the team felt like it couldn't repeat the same settings again. That's why they decided to go with the village-inspired ninja culture instead. He says that there's no stealth game involved, but you can play the game with the wire bug, which allows you to swing around and wall jump, sharing the same similarities with ninja-like actions. Thanks to manga and other works of fictions, ninjas have become very popular and an icon in the West. The team thought that it would be an interesting sort of inspiration. This probably explains why everyone is calling Masaru Tsuchi Kakashi Sensei all over Twitter, since the inspirations for these characters are straight out of manga. In his last quote, director Ichinose explains that while not mentioned in the game, Camera Village from Rise uses the same alphabet that can be seen in Yukumo Village from Monster Hunter Portable 3rd. This shows that they share the same cultural similarities and are likely not too far away from each other. So that's about it for both interviews. I tried to contextualize my own thoughts and keep the quotes exactly as written as best as possible, but that's a bit tricky to do since you're dealing with translations on top of reading someone else's take on what's actually being said. So I definitely understand why there might have been some confusion with the previous interview, and how people might have taken some things out of context when there wasn't any to begin with. If you're new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya!